I'm not trying to let myself off of any hooks here. I promise I'll speak a little bit, for better or for worse, I'm not sure, we'll see. But attunement is an incredibly difficult topic to talk about because by its very definition, it's telling us to go beyond mind, beyond reason, as we just listened. These last 2 weeks, or these 2 weeks last week, where we did not have a service here, though I know at least some of you were up at Ananda Village and heard Jyotish speak about attunement. And this week, where Swamiji is speaking to us about the effort that we need to put into attuning ourselves, are really so important when we look at this question about how can we find God. And by finding God, of course, we mean finding that place of deep inner peace, of true calmness, a sense of deep ease as our life unfolds, those feelings that we can get when we are resonant, really, with a vibration that's bigger than us, that's actually outside of us, though we have the ability to resonate with it. Often, as Tandava was reading in his perfect Whispers reading today, the ego wants to just jump in and say, I know how to do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure this out on my own. And then, very often, we're left with how so many of us live so much of our life. We feel unsettled. We feel anxious. We feel we're not getting things right. We often find ourselves wishing that things were different than how they are. And even those of us who have been on this path for a long time and are really working hard to uplift our consciousness and to really tune in, still, most of us, if we were honest, we would say we find ourselves wishing our partners were being a little different, or the weather was a little different, or there wasn't as much traffic coming home from the village, or whatever it is. Just a whole litany of wanting things to be other than how they are. And one of the things that gets very clear when you look at this topic of attunement is you can't reason your way there. Swami has a beautiful saying here. He says, any university is not remotely related to Vedic realizations. It just struck me when I read that yesterday. There's nothing we're going to learn through reason, through the mind, through a scientific approach that's going to lead us to be able to be more in tune with the divine. But as I listen today, and I've told you, this is a terrible habit of mine. Very often, I don't know what the affirmation is before we get here. I didn't today. And even when Shudambar said discrimination, I thought, that's interesting. Where's Swamiji going to go with this? But it's so beautiful. I mean, in the whole reading, so the devotee judges the relative merit of any idea by the one constant, God. True discrimination is not the product of reasoning, it's soul intuition. And then the affirmation that says, resolutely I quell my inclinations, that my mind be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul. It's so important because at the very end of the talk, we have to come back to what can we actually do to get ourselves more deeply in tune. We know that attunement is the most important thing on the path. At the beginning of a chapter on attunement in a book that Swami Kriyananda wrote called Sadhu Beware. It's really a book about renunciation, and it's a strong book. Swamiji doesn't pull any punches in there. But right away at the beginning of the chapter, Swamiji says, I am convinced that the first and greatest need on the path, he's choosing his words wisely, the first and greatest need on the path is attunement. That it's the final goal of renunciation and the only way to find God. Swamiji says right away, finding a way to deepen our attunement is the only way to find God. Everybody's in this church this morning because that's what they want. Everybody's looking for a little bit of inspiration. Everybody's looking to be able to move through the world and find that total, deep sense of true calmness. And Swamiji says, find ways to attune yourself. Last week up at Ananda Village, David Eby did a wonderful thing with his cello. Some of us have seen that before, where he shows us that if you tune a string, I think I have this right, but if I don't, I have the idea right, to a certain note, and you play that note perfectly on another string, that without touching this string that you have tuned, it will start to resonate with that which is outside of itself, but perfectly playing the note, and it will just start playing itself. He actually did it a couple of years ago here, but it's such a beautiful physical manifestation of what it means to do that which we need to do to get ourselves to be more in tune. And what I was struck with, because Swami says we're not going to find it in university, and of course we know that, but how do we find it? And then I listened to the affirmation today. Then I listened carefully to the words of these two very short pieces that Saranya sang, some of which were, God is truth, God is love. Just that, God is truth, God is love. But the whole first piece, the whole second piece, and then Tandava's reading of whispers, and I know for sure that the only way to deepen our attunement is to find the wisdom in all of the ways that Master Paramhansa Yogananda and Swamiji put it out into the world like a lifeline for us, and says to us, just take my words, just take any of my words and practice them, read them, repeat them, sing them, do the affirmation, and you will find yourself, without needing to think about it, being more perfectly attuned to my vibration and guiding you on your path, like laying down little bits of sweets for us to follow. This week I gave a class. We started this series called The Mainstays of the Spiritual Path. And the first one was attunement. It wasn't planned with any understanding, at least not by me. I think it was planned just now I'm sitting here, I'm saying, Shanti, what do you think about this? You gave a class, you listened to Sunday service last week. You gave a class on attunement Wednesday night. You're going to have to stand up and talk about attunement. You think Master had anything in mind for you or Swamiji? I mean, listen. But when I was giving that class, and I was talking about what it means to really not just come here on a Wednesday night or on a Sunday and hear these words, but to fill our lives with their suggestions, which means really go home and have Swamiji's music playing in your house all the time. Really do what we're asked to do with these weekly affirmations. The affirmation for the rest of this week is discrimination. What if we all actually, maybe some of you do, I'll be honest, I don't. What if we actually read this affirmation, the reading, and said the affirmation every day this week? Because here it is. And it's not just that the words sound good. It's that they have literally been impregnated with Swami Kriyananda's vibration. That just picking this book up and holding it helps us tune in to his vibration. What if we found these pieces that Saranya sang today, and we actually played them over and over, or read the whispers once a day? Because Swamiji says, attunement, I am convinced, is the first and greatest need on the spiritual path. If it's what we all say we want to be doing, then we want to do it. Otherwise, like what Jesus said, I am the vine and you are the branches. And it's such a beautiful image. It's one of those times where Jesus, he's always speaking in parables and images, but could it be any more clear? If you cut the branch away from the vine, it dies. I've spoken here once before about this plant that's like the strongest of all plants in the world. It's an ivy, a vine kind of plant that I planted in my house a long time ago so it would cover this fence and provide some privacy for myself and my neighbors. But this thing not only grows like a weed, oh, it's not, it's beautiful, but it's got little stickers on it, little clingers. And so wherever it grows, it really holds on. You can't get it off. And soon it's clogging the, the drains and the pipes. So I would get up there on ladders and try and pull it off. And one day, a couple of years ago, when it was going to cause some problems, it was separating the gutters from the roof. It was a very determined plant. I said to myself, you are so silly. You just come down here and cut it from its roots. Just cut it from the source of all of what it needs to live. And then sure enough, I could just watch that branch, if you will. This is sort of an upside down example, but it's the truth. It died. It withered. And Jesus says, you can't forget this. I am the way. I am the light. I am everything you need. And if you're not tuning into me, for all intents and purposes, because what life do we care about? We care about our spiritual life. Really, what else matters? Right? Seek ye first the kingdom of God. That's what we're trying to do. Otherwise, we live in ways where we feel separated, we feel alone, we feel lonely, we feel anxious, we feel depressed. These are not uncommon experiences in our world. And by many of us in here at certain times, it's not like depression and anxiety are just for other people. Those are blinking yellow or blinking red lights. They say, what are you going to do now to deepen your attunement? How are you going to take care of this ego? Because otherwise we're living in such a small place compared to where we can go. I'd like to share a couple of stories with you from Narayani's book about Swami Kriyananda. My Heart Remembers Swami Kriyananda, it's called. If you haven't read it, please do. I wrote her a letter the other day before I gave the class, and I said on Wednesday, when the class was, I said to her, last night it came to me, I'm about to offer a class on attunement. I'm going to go get the Bible on attunement, as far as I'm concerned, because it was just part of what she came into this world to teach us. She met Swami Kriyananda when she was in her early 20s. The second time she saw him, it came to her, this is a king. And then the thought, this is my king. And never, for a moment after that, never, second meeting, did she veer from her path. Very much like what we hear Asha say a lot. She saw him at an auditorium at Stanford, and she knew. He knew everything she was looking to learn. This is what Narayani did. She devoted her life to tuning into Swamiji in the most beautiful ways. And I'd just like to share a little bit of that because it shows not just that we need to attune ourselves, not just hearing the words that we've heard so many times, this is how you do it, but what the reading is about today, which says it takes enormous effort on our part. This is not a passive experience. We have to open those doors. We have to love God, as the first commandment says, with all of our heart. That means getting rid of all or taking the energy from all of our desires, all of our likes and dislikes in the world. Imagine that. Easy words to say, transforming it into devotion to God. All of our mind, we say this every single Sunday. All of our mind means all of our thoughts. How can we fill our minds with thoughts? Jyotish really focused on this aspect last week, so I will not. But it means giving our minds things to do so that we're not having the vast majority of our thousands of thoughts in a day go towards, why does it have to be like this? Why does it have to be like that? I don't like this person. I don't want that. It's proven now by MRI and other sophisticated equipment. Guess what? We all do that. So we don't have to sit here and wonder. It's us too. And so we fill our minds with this affirmation, with that music, with these readings, so that in a moment when we're not busy, the affirmation automatically pops into our mind. We train our minds to be uplifted. We can do this. That's been proven too. All of our soul means all of our spiritual energy goes towards God. We do that a lot in meditation. Heart, mind, soul, and strength. And what is all of our strength? All of our strength really means all of the energy that we draw that energy or prana in, and we direct it up here to the light at the point between the eyebrows. We did a Kriya initiation here yesterday for 14 new Kriya bonds. If you don't know what that means, find anybody who looks like they've been here a little while later and ask them. It's important. The whole purpose of Kriya, Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, soul, and strength, bringing all of our energy, opening up our chakras, and bringing it up here. That's a challenge. It requires a lot. It requires faith. It requires right attitude. It requires the courage and the willingness to ask the right questions in the right way. It requires serving God, serving through each other, serving through the temple. It takes a lot to find the things we're looking for. So Narayani, a couple months after she met Swamiji and knew in her heart, not by her mind, that she had found what she didn't even know she was looking for. She's diagnosed with a very aggressive thyroid cancer. It was so aggressive, unusual for thyroid cancers, by the way, that they wanted to operate the next day, literally. They told her she could die. She was 24 years old. Imagine that. She went through the surgery. She went through radiation. She went through chemo. Early on in the process, she says, I was in so much pain. Frequently, my father had to take me to the emergency room to make sure that this was to be expected with the treatment. She wrote to Swamiji, and she said, I'm going through all this, Swamiji, and it's hard. And he wrote back to her, and he said to her, listen to my music. It will heal you. In an email, for months, day and night, 24/7, as we say, Swamiji's music was on wherever she went. Now, I had to stop and ask myself, even if Swamiji had said to me, listen to my music, it will heal you, would I have done that 24/7? And then I said to myself, why aren't you doing it now? It will heal you means, and what she said is, that music came into me and I was able to hear the music from the level of consciousness from which Swamiji composed it. Now, that is the level of consciousness from an extremely highly evolved being. Of course it heals us. It's oneness. It's unity. It's finding God. It's knowing God. It's all these words that are so hard to explain because the English language is limited by our minds. But Swamiji's music can transcend that. Can you imagine? She put it on 24/7. Why are we not doing it? When she went to India to be with Swamiji, she barely spoke any English. By the way, she's been cured of her cancer. When she went to India to be with Swamiji, it was right in the middle of Swamiji writing his interpretation of Master's Bhagavad Gita, of the Bhagavad Gita, but from what Master was feeding him as the interpretation. She spoke almost no English. He called her in to be one of the people to edit it. She said, Swamiji, are you forgetting that I don't speak any English? He said, I know. I want you to edit the book. He comes in a few days later. He finds her with a Spanish-English dictionary. Can you imagine trying to find the Spanish for the Bhagavad Gita word by word? He looks at her. He said, what are you doing with that? She said, well, I don't want to miss anything. He says, sir, you don't need that. By the vibration of the words and tuning into me, you will understand everything. She put her dictionary down and she said, I read with my heart. Is that beautiful? And I received with my heart. The wisdom that we're looking for is the language of the heart. We have to find these words, music, readings, talks, and we have to listen behind all of that to find the heartbeat, the divine heartbeat in whatever the masters are giving us, and find the way for our heart and soul to resonate with it. We are now the D string that is not being played, but we can be being played. And we start, I said it takes great effort, not because it's great effort. How hard is it to put music on and let it play in your home all the time? How hard is it to take Swamiji chanting Om and have it be the background for everything? That's not hard. What's hard is that our egos don't want us to do it. And so, for reasons that seem utterly absurd to me, as I'm up here speaking about it, utterly absurd, we don't do it. We don't put the music on 24/7. We don't remember. The intention's good. We don't remember to ask God to share his heart with us. As soon as we ask, we are opening the door through which that divine guidance can descend and enter. It cannot in any other way. Our willingness to ask questions, our desire, sincere desire to know, our sitting still, every meditation, Swamiji, Master, come to me, meditate through me. Let me look into your eyes. Be here with me now. Do the small things. They add up. The only thing that's hard about it is that Satan's tugging at our feet, wanting to hold us back. Let's all make sure, this is why Kriya Yoga, such a sacred technique. If you're not a Kriyaban, or if you're a Kriyaban and you're not practicing, think about it. Wherever you are, start doing these practices little by little. Then, as Master said one time, wonderful, rubbing his hands with great glee, now I can come in and take charge of your life. Now you will move to that place of perfect attunement. You show me I'm ready, I'm going to be right there to help you. God bless you.
Yes, it's she, the Divine Mother, she who made the universe. Yes, it's she, the Divine Mother, ruler of every heart's desire, love more ancient, bliss eternal, may our hearts soon be merged in thee. Love more ancient, bliss eternal, may our hearts soon be merged in thee. Yes, it's she, the Divine Mother, she who made the universe. Yes, it's she, the Divine Mother, ruler of every heart's desire, love more ancient, bliss eternal, may our hearts soon be merged in thee. Love more ancient, bliss eternal, may our hearts soon be